Hey, I thought I'd let you know that Leonard Newton told you to get lost.
Why does he want me to do that?
I don't know.
Get lost as in like go into the woods and get lost? Or?
Get lost.
Oh. Well, that's not very nice.
I don't think so.
I guess I'll quit. I bet you a lot of them want me lost.
Yeah.
Do you think Matt Smith's watching in his tight spandex pajama pants tonight?
I think he is. And Matt, if you want to take full advantage of this opportunity, put the link to your merchandise right there in the comment section.
Yeah, put a link and actually come on the show.
Link to your band merchandise. And you have an open invitation to come on the show, email us, and we'll send you a link to join. Yeah.
You got 2 tracks running right now.
I know. Hello.
Happy New Year.
It is Happy New Year, isn't it?
It is.
Welcome to the Liberty Without Compromise live stream broadcast. We are the only live, local, liberty-minded program right here in Kootenai County where we expose the political power players, politicians, social influencers, and as of late, very potent and potentate religious leaders.
Imposter pastors.
Imposter pastors. We're your hosts, Dan and Dawna Wilson. I'm here to screen your questions and comments. And throughout the program, you can submit those questions and comments right into the comments section. And if it's appropriate to the conversation, we can fit those right in. If you're watching live with us tonight, be sure to share this feed to your page or profile so that more of us can join in on the conversation. And for anybody listening back on our podcast, be sure to catch us live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. A reminder that opinions expressed are ours only and not necessarily that of any of our advertisers, affiliates, sponsors, or guests. Maybe we'll have some impromptu guests tonight. I don't know. Maybe Matt Smith will join us instead of just running his mouth in the comment section.
Whatever.
Tonight on Liberty Without Compromise, we present a comprehensive recap of the ongoing investigation that's surrounding Paul Van Noy, tracing the story from the first public allegations to the evidence and testimony uncovered to date. This episode does expand on new information involving Steve Cooney, a longtime associate publicly praised by Van Noy in last Sunday sermon. We examine why that reference matters in light of firsthand testimony, past allegations, and newly uncovered records. We'll also share an update on the growing number of sources coming forward, many with direct firsthand involvement, including former employees of Van Noy and individuals connected to the ministry and wider community. While some of this information is still being vetted, the volume and consistency of these accounts raise serious questions that demand scrutiny. In addition, we're going to cover breaking developments involving Bob Norris, including the reinstatement of special deputizations he had previously, not so long ago, rescinded, leaving one notable exception, however. Join us in this conversation tonight throughout the episode by, like I said, entering your comments and questions into the comment section on whichever platform you're watching, whether that's Facebook, YouTube, X, or Instagram. This episode focuses on patterns, accountability, and why silence, when maintained by those in power who are sitting on a beach in Hawaii for the better part of a month, why that carries consequences far beyond one individual. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here is your host, Dan Wilson.
Episode 53. Happy New Year. Thank you for taking the time tonight, those of you that are watching live, to join us right here, the very first episode of this new year. Now, I did not make any kind of New Year's resolution. I don't know about you. I typically don't do those. I
Didn't?
try to live a disciplined life year round.
Oh, so then you're just good. Like
Well,
the January comes and you're good because you already been doing it.
I mean, I think, it's kind of continual self-correcting,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you don't-
find something
don't
wrong,
wait.
you don't wait until the new year. I hope you, though, are finding success as we begin this 2026 year. It's already off to quite a interesting start. Liberty is on the line, as it always is. I don't know how many of you are watching the headlines. A lot of uncertainty is going on nationally, globally, statewide, wherever you happen to be, also right here in Cooney County, which is where we are usually primarily focused. And we have so many things to cover tonight. We're not going to spend too much more on an introduction. But several weeks ago, middle of December, we came here and reported to you, Sheriff Bob Norris got mad and pulled the special cross deputizations away from Chief White of Coeur d'Alene Police and Captain Hager, and Chief of Rathdrum, Chief Haley, who was former Detective Haley of the Coeur d'Alene Police. We speculated that he did that because he was mad that he was named in the investigation of the town hall incident back in February of 2022. We talked about it right here. We've got a little update on that right now for you. So we're going to go ahead and go to our first video of the year. You're going to get a kick out of this. So when you take a watch, we'll stop it, show you a little article, and then we'll come back and finish and show you your very own sheriff and how he testifies before the people. I mean, again, speculation. He's doing several things. He's sending a message out there to all the other chiefs. Hey, if you cross me at all, I'm going to take your ability to conduct law enforcement activities outside of your jurisdiction. I'm going to keep you on a short leash.
This is breaking news.
We do begin with breaking news tonight at 6. Rathdrum Police Chief Daniel Haley, we're learning, is claiming witness intimidation ahead of a major trial next week. You'll recall this Kootenai County Republican Central Committee town hall, where Teresa Borenpole was removed. Good evening, I'm Sean Owsley with some new developments tonight. Chief Haley sent a letter to the Coeur d'Alene City Prosecutor Thursday, we're learning, alleging intimidation by Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris. Nonstop Local KHQ's John Webb live on this breaking story in studio tonight. Good evening, John. You just obtained the letter. What does it say?
Yeah, Sean, good evening to you. Chief Haley says in this letter, quote, I view this revocation as a retaliatory and an intimidation tactic as I'm preparing to testify as a witness in the upcoming trial. As we reported on Thursday, Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris revoked Haley's special deputy privileges with the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. He also revoked the privileges of Coeur d'Alene Police Chief Lee White and Captain David Hager. As you see in this letter to the prosecutor, Chief Haley writes, quote, the timing of this letter being received less than 1 week prior to the trial of Paul Truitt leads me to believe this is tied to the town hall investigation. I have had no interactions with Sheriff Norris since completing the investigation, and certainly none since I was sworn in as the Chief of Police of Rathdrum PD. There is nothing that would provide rise to such action, end quote.
So we're going to go ahead and pull up our next slide. If I put that on pause, hopefully I was able to do that correctly, Mrs. Producer. Imagine having, as you're pulling up that slide for me, thank you. Imagine having a sheriff elected by you, the people, the darling of the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee, who you own this, Bob Norris. Imagine having somebody that is the chief law enforcement officer of the county, supposed to set the example for everyone, be everybody's sheriff, conduct himself the way he has done over and over and over and over again. And none of you knuckleheads apparently want to do anything about it. While he puts all of you at jeopardy by withdrawing the cross deputizations of the chief of not only Coeur d'Alene PD, but also Post Falls PD. And as a result, since the chiefs who are ultimately responsible for their departments, they decided that, hey, we can't go out with our joint SWAT team with Kootenai County, and we can't secure this county. 2/3 of the joint Kootenai County Coeur d'Alene SWAT team was Coeur d'Alene PD, leaving 7 SWAT officers to take on the entire county in any kind of an event. This is how petty Bob Norris is because, well, we're going to go ahead and read through this article coming up right now. This was in today's Spokesman Review. After revoking Coeur d'Alene police leader's deputy status, the sheriff restores it for now. Cooney County Sheriff Bob Norris temporarily restored the special deputy status of Coeur d'Alene police leaders just days after revoking it in an act of alleged retaliatory behavior, according to documents obtained by the Spokesman Review. Norris revoked those privileges from the Coeur d'Alene Police Chief Lee White, Captain Dave Hager, and Rathdrum Police Chief Dan Haley in early December, only for 2 of the 3 statuses to be restored less than a week later. The revocation of the special deputy status or privilege allowing a member of law enforcement to perform duties outside their jurisdiction is held in abeyance pending further discussion with Norris, Under Sheriff Brett Nelson wrote in a December 16th email. You know, Brett Nelson always, the one that actually runs the department, cleans up after Bob, always has to come out and do Bob's dirty work, right? He has to write the apology letters when Bob acts like an petulant little child and flies off the handle. And, well, this is what Bob did. The sheriff and I are doing such not only for the benefit and safety of the citizens of Coeur d'Alene and Cooney County, but also for that of the personnel of our respective agencies. Because he not only did he put the entire county at risk by doing this, by taking part of law enforcement out of the picture, but he also put other officers in danger because those officers who are close to deputies and other officers that may need help, well, when you start pissing in the sandbox and nobody can play together in it nicely, it puts all of us at risk because of Bob's impetulant behavior. So to save face, Nelson has to come back and say, hey, for decades, our agencies have worked together as a mutual force multipliers to serve and protect our community, and I want nothing more than for that to continue, especially for the safety of our personnel. I mean, really? The sheriff gets named in an investigation, which he was wrong. He's not above the freaking law. But this little Napoleon, this short, pudgy little man that calls himself the badass tactical sheriff from LA, you dare cross him or make him feel a little insecure like all the real law enforcement officers around here do, the experienced ones, then Bob wields his power that you idiots at the KCRCC gave to him once again. Goes on, Norris originally canceled the deputy status of the 3 men without a stated reason, but Chief White, speculated in internal emails that the revocation had something to do with the department investigating Norris for his role in a disruptive Republican town hall on February 22nd that led to the arrest of multiple private security guards and later the conviction of their supervisor. Paul Truett was acquitted of some charges of battery and found guilty on others related to the incident following the 3-day trial in December. Here's where I want you guys to pay attention. Haley, who became Rathdrum's police chief in October, is a former Coeur d'Alene police detective who assisted in the initial investigation into the Republican town hall. He was the main investigator in the case and testified at length during Truett's trial and repeatedly voiced concerns over that's all of you, people in this county, First Amendment rights to cheer and jeer during a public event. Norris was captured on video grabbing and tugging the arm of a woman who was jeering at the MC, threatening to pepper spray her because the idiot doesn't understand use of force. He's such an absolute moronic imbecile that he would have used pepper spray in close proximity to everybody else in that enclosed theater. But he was absolved of any criminal wrongdoings in the incident by the Idaho Attorney General's office in November, which, after listening to the trial, listening to the fact that the idiot deputy AG never actually interviewed anybody. The way that they exonerated Norris was they took the report that Detective Haley compiled when he sent it to the Coeur d'Alene prosecutors, and that buffoon based his entire investigation off of that report. Never talked to any credible witnesses. And when you listen to what happened in the trial and even the manner at which his letter was released to the public, The attorney general is an absolute farce. I'm ashamed that the dude's even a Republican.
Oh, yeah. Did you have more on your document?
Yeah, I'm going to go just a little bit more. Looks like the Coeur d'Alene PD, being the adults in the room, may not satisfy Bob's latest tantrum, White wrote in an email to Coeur d'Alene Mayor Dan Gukin and City Administrator Troy Timison. Canceling the men's deputy status effectively banned White and Hager from supervising their officers who were part of the area's joint SWAT team of 14 Coeur d'Alene police officers and 7 Kootenai County deputies. In the end, we'll see how long this thing lasts, but we're going to talk to some other officers off the record who are going to tell their story of what's really going on behind the scenes. We're working on that. We're going to bring it to you guys next week. But I want you to remember, part of the reason that Norris does this is because, as we told you before in his peer reviews, he was an absolute turd, a slug, as they said. He never really did patrol. He never brought any of you guys a real resume to back up his mouth of what he did, but he was a desk jockey, and you can see it over and over by his inability to even conduct basic patrol DT tactics inside that theater when he tried to grab a woman. He couldn't even do that. He had to bring in Lear Security Management to do his dirty work. But I'm going to show you this last part of the video because Norris was, and we're going to break this down. We're going to bring in an expert to talk about Bob's body language and his answers. When Bob took the stand to testify in Truett's trial, I was completely shocked. I've been on the stand before as an officer. They tell you when you first start how to answer questions. What you see out of Norris is it's like he has never one time truly testified. He fidgets. He moves things around. He continually runs his mouth to the point where the prosecutor has to continually object. He over answers. Constant hearsay. The guy is a wreck. Take a look here because this is ultimately what I'm getting at. Bob is so intimidated by real law enforcement around this region, whether it's the former LAPD chief up in Spirit Lake who still doesn't have his cross-deputization card, whether it's now Chief Haley down in Rathdrum or Chief White in Coeur d'Alene. Bob has an inferiority complex. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. The dude doesn't even understand Idaho state law that gives him or any other deputy or officer the power to arrest. So let's take a look at this last part of the video and laugh with me.
For example, you have to comply with the Idaho statutes that pertain to arrest. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yes.
So are you familiar with which statutes under Idaho code pertain to arrest?
As it pertains to trespassing or?
Just as to the requirements for a peace officer or a citizen engaging in the act of arresting another individual.
Arresting somebody.
Well, that's not what I asked. I'm just asking if you're familiar.
Yes.
Off the cuff, do you know which statute it is? Probably not a fair question. It's 19-602. And then several others. 19-601. That defines what arrest is. 19-602 defines how an arrest is made. Are you familiar with that particular statute?
Yes.
And in your training experience, would you agree that that statute requires that, quote, an individual must not be subjected to any more restraint than is necessary for arrest or detention?
Correct.
Cop 101.
Can you fill us in a little bit? I think his responses probably got lost in that. You had a smile on your face on some of those.
Well,
a little bit entertaining.
the prosecutor was asking him, hey, are you familiar with Idaho code that gives you the right to make an arrest? And Bob's like, yeah. And then he says, well, are you talking about trespassing or, and the prosecutor's like, no, what code allows you, gives you the authority to make your arrest? Cop 101. If you don't understand what statutes in your state give you as a peace officer the right to make a lawful arrest, you probably shouldn't be out there with a sheriff's star on. You shouldn't be out there putting your hands on people inside public events. And notice his demeanor. Yes. He knew that he was owned by that prosecutor the entire time. I can't wait to break down a special edition because it's an hour long testimony. I think that those that have not seen it yet, unfortunately, the audio is horrible because they allowed Summer Bushnell in her subpar Walmart grade microphone, so you can barely hear what do they call that? Pool.
The pool camera for all the media. So yeah, you hear unfortunately more of the room noise than you can the speaking. One
last thing I will say, just side note, we're going to move on now to talking about Van Noy, is as I was scrolling on social media this weekend, there was a video recapping. It was an error. The video stated that Norris was absolved in this trial of any wrongdoing. Well, Norris was never on trial. The kid, I understand what he was trying to do, but there was a lot of comments. One of the comments that I saw happened to be from, I think it's Nick Berg, one of the Lear Asset Management guards, the one that claims that he got bit. Mm-hmm. And he's running his mouth on this social platform.
Yeah.
And calling the chief of Rathdrum a liar. And you know, what astounds me is as I was bantering back and forth with him, he apparently doesn't realize that there's a federal lawsuit coming. No. He doesn't understand that was not the one and done. So I told him, I said, hopefully Norris is going to donate some of his $180,000 to cover his legal fees.
It's wild to me how often there are people running their mouths on social media, on public platforms, when they're very close in adjacency to active investigations or something that's going to trial. People just do not understand this concept of, I mean, that stuff you're commenting publicly can definitely be brought into those trials and investigations. Yeah, I can't believe he was running his mouth on that one. We do the getting you up to speed on Van Noy is coming up here very shortly. We did have some questions and comments that came in throughout that segment when you were talking about Sheriff Bob Norris bringing those deputizations back to all but one. So yeah, let's talk about some of these. Steve, joining us from YouTube, says in taking away those deputizations, maybe this could somehow be strategy. It weakens KCSO and SWAT so we can call in the feds.
No, I mean, feds only come in again if there's a federal crime being committed as a general rule. Even the feds that showed up for the Canfield shooting, they only do that at the direction of the sheriff or whatever agency happens to have command at the time. So yeah, I get that. But no, that's just how short-sighted Norris is, that he would screw his own guys and other departments and the good of the community.
Nick, joining us on YouTube, says the security company or those employees became the patsies for Norris.
Did. Yeah, they really did. Look, Paul Truett knows better. Paul Truett tried to suck up to me when I first ran for sheriff because Norris went off on his original plan, and he wanted to be a contract police force for Cooney County. He presented me an actual policy and plan that he wanted me to present. I told him, absolutely not. Idaho does not allow that. Fast forward a year, he made nice with Norris. Norris hangs him out to dry. And look, he was his own worst enemy. We talked about this several months ago when we went over the Bourne Poll and Greg Johnson assault that took place. And you're not going to convince me otherwise. They were assaulted. And I think the trial that's coming is going to demonstrate that far greater than this little pony show that went on. But especially these young guys, you know, their daily rates are maybe a couple $100 for an event like that, maybe. Norris is on over 190,000, 180, 100. It's probably over 190 now a year in his disability retirement from the state of California, in addition to his $140,000 sheriff salary here. These guys don't make anywhere near what he has. These legal fees are going to bury these poor guys.
Not only that, I mean, maybe he solicited them to go hands-on because he would have been in violation of his disability if he actually went hands-on.
Well, I think he did that the minute he grabbed Teresa Borenpol.
It was already too late. You kind of answered this one, but curious about the latest in the lawsuit against Norris because he's got several filed against him. So aside from what we were talking about here in this segment.
Yeah, I mean, you have the Collinson lawsuit that's still out there, and you have the Borenpol tort claim and the Johnson tort claim. Now, those tort claims are usually, as I recall, good for about 90 days. When the government agencies that are being accused of causing the damages or harm, if they don't respond by law, then that allows the plaintiffs, the claimants, to move forward with lawsuits. So I believe that they were waiting for this trial to complete. And Norris said a lot of very stupid things on the stand. He has now got himself in a perjury trap for when he goes to testify as to what constitutional authority did he have to put his hands on that woman. You may not like the Coeur d'Alene police, but they did do an actual bang-up job of thoroughly going through and looking at everything through the facts. And just because local Republicans that are controlling the government aren't stepping in, which is disappointing, because either everybody matters or nobody matters, and this joke of a deputy AG, I'm so disgusted when you listen to Chief Haley articulate on the stand, as well as the prosecutor, to argue even what the attorney general did. It was a sham. It was an absolute sham. There was no investigation, but they think that they are untouchable, and they're going to find out the hard way really quick. And so, yeah, those lawsuits are probably coming pretty soon. I think Borenpol is still at over $350,000. And Wendy Olson's taking notes. So all these idiots running their mouths online, they better preserve their documents and lawyer up.
It's a common thread with a lot of these power players that move from Sheriff Bob Norris and other elected officials that surround him, his sheriff deputy gang, and spills over into the religious sphere, where you've got these religious power players that have entered that political arena. And like Dan said, they're very cavalier, almost like they think they're untouchable, which has been an issue for years here in Kootenai County, because they really have this network. They have done what they do, and they've done it completely unchallenged with the full support of the Republican Central Committee, the endorsements and support, and they go unchallenged. There is no accountability.
Yep. And once you have zero accountability, then you have the dysfunction that takes place. You have the corruption. You have eventual criminal acts that take place, because they always fall, right, when things are unchecked. And then you lose the party. You lose the status in the community. You lose the votes because of the corruption. And again, every time Bob Norris opens his mouth and does something stupid, the KCRCC, every last one of you idiots that voted for him, that refuse to say he doesn't belong on our recommendation list because of, well, we've talked about all these things before. Every last one of you owns it. And I laugh. I sit down and drink my whiskey and watch this trial go on. And I'm thinking, Brent Reagan, you absolute buffoon, you fool. These are the people that you surround yourself with.
What's Brent Reagan been doing lately? I haven't seen her.
I think he's laying a little low, probably worried about how many shekels he's going to lose in the lawsuit.
Seems like he did a common sense article. All right. Paul Van Noy, bringing everybody up to speed. Are you just on, this is a personal vendetta. Look at you hear these names on repeat. Sheriff Bob Norris, you lost to him is what we hear on repeat. And Paul Van Noy was interconnected with this because of his close proximity. And as you hear in his own words on audio tapes that we've revealed, Bob Norris is his friend and has always done everything that Paul has ever asked him to do.
To include go down and check out suspicious vehicles at grocery stores upon his demands.
Yeah, some really wild things said there. A reminder, it's been a bit here. If you've joined us since the top of the hour, share this live feed to your page or profile and get involved in that comment section as it's relevant to the conversation. We'll bring that in. So back to Pastor Paul Van Noy. We have been reporting on the events surrounding him, allegations of abuse at his hand that takes on all forms. So that is a broad general statement, not specifically accusing him of anything, but been reporting on it for over a month. It's probably closing in on a month and a half or so now. And so the accusations are, we're building a name for ourselves and a platform for ourselves by going after this guy, just capitalizing on it. It's a personal vendetta of yours. Tell us about how you became acquainted with Pastor Paul Van Noy, some of the history on that before we go into a recap of, since his daughter Danielle came out with her statements a little over a month ago. How is it you came to know Paul Van Noy, and why is it that you may or may not have a personal vendetta?
I've lived in this region my entire life, traveled back and forth between the states. We're 30 miles away from Spokane. So I heard of Paul. I supported Christian radio back in the day. Had a friend that had a radio show that was also part of Candlelight. So, I knew who Paul was. And at the beginning, they seemed like most of North Idaho and Eastern Washington, conservative Christian churches. So that was about the extent that I knew about him. We came over here and moved over here in 2020. And, we attended 2 times. I personally, and you know this, you can testify to this. We walked out of there going, there's something not right with this dude. Not necessarily that he was corrupt, but I'm just like, I don't get a good vibe off this dude. We never went back. I ran for sheriff in 2024. I announced in 2023, and I was reaching out to many public figures in the community to introduce myself. That's, after all, what you do when you're running for office. And I knew that Paul was going to most likely be on vacation from what I was being advised by others. I received an email address. I wasn't 100% certain that it was his because it was pastor at Candlelight. You guys have heard this story before. Sent him an email introducing myself, saying, I'm running for sheriff. Here's some information on me and a link. I would love to get together with you and to share with you about why I'm running for sheriff. Let me know, how I can get in contact with you. And we never heard an answer back. And people would come up to us that were his parishioners throughout the campaign months later and say, hey, why don't you talk to Paul? I explained to him, I sent an email and never heard back. Their response was, well, he said that he never got one. So then I sent my email that I sent to him to them. And then he changed the story and said, well, it was vague. And so fast forward to the end of the summer, a parishioner who happened to be a big supporter of ours on their own went to go meet with Paul to advocate for me. I knew nothing about this. The conversation involved the former Homeland Security Special Agent, David Cummings, who surrounds herself with Bob Norris and Paul Van Noy and other entities here in the community. She's very heavily involved, even in prepper groups. Her husband's former Customs and Border Patrol pilot. And we were leaked that audio. We played that audio several weeks ago where Paul went systematically through and began to attack everything about me and to gossip and to lie about my positions and to change the narrative. And he didn't know he's being recorded. We didn't know. That recording was given to us months later. We were shocked when we heard it. We did not use it, girls, for the election, even though it would have been very beneficial. In the meantime, Paul, when he knew he got caught, sent me a email gaslighting me, telling me that my email offended him, and he wanted me to basically come back and do things the right way to wine and dine him, and I did not respond. I was done with it. After the election, a week later, in his infamous rants on the pulpit, he accused me of threatening him, even though I had never had a conversation with him or anything other than that first email. And I got tired of his lying. So finally in January, about a year ago, we released the very first audio, what would you call it, transcripts. Mm-hmm. We read them aloud, protecting the identity of everybody involved. We didn't even say it was Paul. So my experience with Paul was He's a dirty, rotten scoundrel. And during the Dan Gookin campaign, when I realized that all the same players that were promoting Dan Gookin, who I had nothing against, I wasn't for or against any of the mayoral candidates in Coeur d'Alene. We interviewed them all. But when I saw Stephanie Fetzer, David Lou Cummings, and Aaron and Lucky Barnard surround themselves and promote Gookin and attack others the way we had been attacked, I realized that something was afoot again. I saw the same old tactics that they were all using. And so you and I, we literally went ahead and we published all the audio after we got permission from the girl, Monica. I call her girl. She's a young lady.
Young lady.
And this is what started it all. But you listen to the hour and a half of gaslighting between Paul and the federal agent, running their mouths freely, talking about Todd Engel, the Bundy supporter. He called it a Bundy spirit that was Paul's personal, really good friend that he led to the Lord and wept when he went to jail. And Paul talking about, if he had enough guts in a civil war to kill his next door neighbor, thinking this out loud. All these stupid things that Paul said and is gossiping about me and is supposing what my spiritual state is or what my relationship is with Christ. And the guy is nothing more than a bullshit artist. So, I mean, when we released it, I'm like, screw it. I'm not covering for this guy. He needs to be exposed because I personally experienced his lies, his bullshitting, his gaslighting. And, Gookin was the recipient of Candlelight's support that helped get him over top the finish line. Gookin still goes there. Gookin imposed himself several weeks ago when I began to make my record requests. He wanted to meet with the chief and talk about the timing of my record request. I don't think that's a good look for a mayor to be involved with a pastor right now that has this much crap surrounding himself and stuck on him right now. But yeah, I mean, so I personally experienced Paul Van Noy's absolute depravity. And I have zero F's about talking about it and exposing it. So when all these other stories came out, when Danielle posted her famous post on X, calling her dad out, and then Paul actually verifying that it was true, after that, the floodgates opened. And we really realized that how evil Paul really is.
Yeah. Deviant behavior that truly has followed him from the inception of his ministry in Southern California. It's followed him from there. And there are patterns of that same deviant behavior throughout decades of ministry here in Kootenai County, two or three or so. I think next we're going to bring a recap then of where we are. We have a lot of new viewers and people following the Liberty Without Compromise platform that are seeing or hearing sound bites and probably struggling a bit to understand in context. Okay, where did this all begin? Where is the overview, the whole story? We have new people joining us over on the TikTok platform, where they'll hear sound bites because for certain platforms, you share things in sound bites. And yes, that is how you get people's attention. But our effort has always been for long form media, for comprehensive live streams, long form interviews, supplying full audio. Yes, there are sound bites that we bring to you. They are not edited. They are not faked. It is not AI. But yes, the different forms of media play well on these different social platforms. So people are joining from all of those places. So the effort tonight is to just recalibrate the conversation and say, this is where this started. And then we're going to pick up after we bring you guys up to speed on the events surrounding Van Noy and that whole investigation that's underway. And then we're going to pick that up on the other side. Yeah, anything else?
Nope. I think that'll
all right. Join in on the conversation. Continue to do that there in the comment section and go ahead and share this stream to your page or profile. Factual recap of events surrounding Pastor Paul Van Noy of Candlelight Christian Fellowship. For those of you who are just now joining the Liberty Without Compromise Network, I want to take a few minutes to clearly and carefully walk through how the coverage of the events surrounding Pastor Paul Van Noy, how they began, what has been confirmed with evidence, and who has spoken firsthand where things stand today. There's been no shortage of claims that what you're seeing is somehow out of context, has been edited, or was designed to misrepresent Paul Van Noy. This recap exists to dispute that directly by laying out the full timeline in order with facts, testimony, and documented evidence. This story began when Danielle Van Noy, the daughter of Paul Van Noy, came forward publicly with detailed allegations that she was sexually abused as a minor. Danielle stated that her father knew about the abuse and failed to report it. She also described a long-standing pattern of silence, minimization, and protection of abusers rather than protection of victims. Following Danielle's statement, we entered into direct communication with Gordon Waltho, Danielle's husband. While Gordon has not participated in a formal on-camera interview, we have been in consistent direct communication with him since Danielle's initial statement. Gordon has provided detailed accounts, documentation, and clarification that align with Danielle's testimony. Importantly, multiple statements Gordon has made have since been indirectly authenticated through Paul Van Noy's own public responses that acknowledge key facts while simultaneously attempting to shift narratives when accountability is being demanded. As this coverage progressed, we interviewed Alyssa. She provided firsthand testimony of sexual abuse she endured from her stepfather, who served in leadership at Candlelight Christian Fellowship. Alyssa testified that the abuse was reported to Paul Van Noy and that no action was taken. Alyssa's testimony didn't stop there. She also described long-standing concerns involving Steve Cooney, a close associate of Paul Van Noy. Alyssa stated that Cooney maintained a close friendship with her abuser and that when she reported a separate violent assault to police, Cooney involved himself in that situation and attempted to convince her that the attack was her fault. Years later, Alyssa described another deeply disturbing incident involving Cooney's family while on what was presented as a missions assignment, an incident involving sexualized behavior toward her young child that was downplayed and dismissed when that was reported. This context is especially relevant given that in a recent sermon, Paul Van Noy publicly praised Steve Cooney as being a close friend and associate without at all acknowledging the serious allegations and testimony that has now been made public. During the course of this investigation, audio recordings were released in which Paul Van Noy identifies himself in his own words as someone who molested a neighbor's daughter when he was in his teens. These recordings have been authenticated, and Paul Van Noy has publicly confirmed the audio is real in his public responses, seeking to downplay or clarify his statements that were found in that audio. Claims that the recordings are fabricated or deceptively edited are completely false. In additional audio, Paul Van Noy also describes knowingly allowing a registered sex offender to attend Candlelight Christian Fellowship, stating that nobody knows. This raises serious concerns about transparency, safeguarding practices, and the safety of children within the church. Further, we interviewed Joy, the daughter of Paul Van Noy's sister, Judy. Joy shared detailed family history and testified with her mother's permission to abuse that allegedly occurred within the Van Noy household during childhood. According to Joy, her mother Judy has accused Paul Van Noy of incest that occurred over multiple years during their upbringing. Joy stated clearly that based on what she knows and has witnessed, she believes her uncle is a danger to this community. This was firsthand family testimony shared with permission, not rumor or speculation. Since releasing these interviews and recordings, we have received numerous additional reports from individuals connected to Candlelight and related ministries. Some of these reports are still being vetted and cannot yet be independently corroborated. However, they consistently reflect the same patterns already documented: abuse minimized, victims discredited, authority figures being protected, and then religious language being used to deflect accountability. It's also important to address claims that this coverage is driven by bias or vendetta. Every major claim presented publicly has been supported by firsthand testimony, authenticated audio documentation, or direct acknowledgement by Paul Van Noy himself. Where information is still developing, we state that clearly and very responsibly. This is about documented patterns of abuse that have been occurring for decades, a pattern of deviant behavior that has followed Paul Van Noy from the inception of his ministry in Southern California. Failures to protect, and very credible testimony from multiple independent sources, including admissions made by Paul Van Noy himself. For those just joining us, none of what you're seeing exists in isolation. Each piece fits into a broader documented timeline. We encourage you to review the full interviews, the full audio recordings, and the original statements, all made available on our platforms through Facebook, our YouTube channel, at the Idaho Sheriff, and also on our website, libertywithoutcompromise.com.
It's hard to believe that there has been so many different angles that have emerged from what we just originally thought was an exposure of Paul intimidating a parishioner with the federal agent.
Mm-hmm.
That was bad enough. But then it has been like a waterfall effect. We have so many people that we are already geared up to interview. They're coming and telling their individual stories, the numerous emails that we can't even keep up with on a daily basis with very good leads. And you and I have expanded, and we have professional investigators that are now assisting us in research, because there is no way that Dawna and I, with our own schedules, can devote it to everything that is going on. And let me tell you, it is so bad that there will come a day when those of you who are still supporting him like girls, and we're going to talk about this a little later, you're going to forever be stained with the stink of Paul, the imposter pastor, all over you, and you deserve every last bit of it.
Yeah, and for those who've said that it doesn't, we're flying through, no, anything that we get or anybody that comes to us, we're just throwing it up and seeing what'll stick, which is the exact opposite. There's so much coming in that there is a fraction of what we've gone public with, because it has been either firsthand witness statements, there's been documented evidence, and it has been vetted to the point that we know that it's safe to go ahead and expose that publicly. The rest of what we're hearing, like Dan just said, it gets worse from there. Mm-hmm. Because pretty much any form of deviancy, and I'm not talking specifically sexual deviancy, so get your mind beyond that for a moment, but other types of deviancy, whether it be ethical, financial, different levels of fraud. I mean, pretty
different
much,
levels of predatory practices.
Yes. And so those are the things that are being reported in, and the statements are enough and corroborate each other enough that I have no doubt that there's validity to those, but with lacking evidence, those are not things that we're going to bring forward, but it is what we are continuing to work on. I mean, even to today, emails have been sent. There's searches being done in networks for federal prison sentences and figuring out what counties people were in at the time when they're known felons, and tracing back phone calls being made, messages being left.
I didn't even give you some of the news
just take time.
Before we went online. Well,
yeah.
I'm not going to, but what I'm going to tell you is that I will be preparing it next week, because it shows federal involvement in some of these individuals and their theft. Child molesters, zero tolerance for child molesters, like even lower than zero. I don't want them anywhere around the public. So why would Paul allow a registered sex offender to come and be employed and involved at candlelight? Let's go to slide number, I think it's 4. I may be a little bit off here. This guy right here, we were given a tip, took a little digging, and we did find it. This is Thomas Telliano. He has a conviction for lewd and lascivious acts with a child under 14. He is a child molester, and he's one of the worst kinds. Level 3 means they are highly likely to reoffend, and yet Paul knows this and brings him on staff, allows him to get up and give announcements and to wander freely around the church. Well, what does it take to get a level 3 sentence? What does it mean, lewd and lascivious? According to California Penal Code 288, here is it summed up. To be guilty of lewd acts on a child under this statute, the prosecution must prove that you touched a child's body or got a child to touch the child's body, your body, or someone else, and the touching occurred on bare skin or through clothing, and the touching was for sexual reasons, and the child was under 14. You catching a drift of how sick this dude is? Goes on. Defining lewd acts of a child. Willfully, you intended on doing what was necessary to violate the law and touched any part of the child's body on the bare skin or through the clothing, or, page 6, caused a child to touch his or her body, your body, or the body of someone else, and the touching occurred on bare skin or through the clothing, and you intended on arousing, appealing to, or gratifying the lust, passions, or sexual desires of yourself or the child, and the child was under the age of 14 years at the time of the act. Let's go back and show that picture of Tom again. Here's where it gets worse. We're going to have a guest on next week that's going to speak more to this. But Tom, when he's up here in Cooney County, meets a woman, proposes to the woman, and he marries the woman. He forgot one thing, which is to inform her that he had this conviction in California.
Is that Nevada?
No, California.
Okay.
Yeah, he lives in Nevada now. This is where this current sex offender registry is out of. So the lady that he marries, sweet lady, finally figures out that he's a registered sex offender, child sex offender. She wants a divorce. Pastor Paul, or shall we call him the imposter pastor, who loves any kind of sexual deviant or offender, apparently. Well, Paul tells them, well, you can't divorce him because he's, washing the blood. He's been forgiven. And instead, he wants somebody on staff to counsel this wife, to counsel her not to divorce Thomas. Now, this individual that Paul asks to do the counseling is neither a counselor nor had any training or experience in counseling another person. Once again, we have told you now several weeks in a row about all of the sex offenders that Paul covers for, including, do we have the audio of him where he's admitting to what he does? Let's play this again so we can put this into kind of context, folks. Paul himself gleefully bragging about his own experience where he molested somebody.
Yeah, I don't know if I have that right here.
We heard that in his own words. How depraved, how deviant, how disgusting do you have to be for a woman to come to you and say, look, this marriage was fraudulent. This was kept from me. Paul, we're going to confirm, knew this, and I think that Paul even married them. We're going to confirm it through the courts. What kind of a sick bastard does that to another person? Somebody that the shepherd is supposed to be protecting. But Tom Girl and Bradford Girl, they all run their mouths in support. They can't get enough of Paul. These are the types of individuals that think Paul is doing great and that this is just an attack on Paul.
I want to say something about that because I noticed back on, it was one of Paul Van Noy's original posts made on his page. I don't know if it's a personal profile page, he's listed as a public figure. That's where Paul Van Noy has released his public statements in response initially to his daughter, Danielle. I did notice that Tom Girl and possibly Bradford,
Jeremiah or Bradford?
Jeremiah or Bradford, one of those two sons, were initially asking valid questions of Paul Van Noy. Mm-hmm. This is what I initially saw, that they said, look, what I've heard, like, I want to defend you. We've enjoyed going to your church. I think they felt planted there. But they were asking good questions and actually initially giving some pushback and saying, I am disturbed by what I heard in the audio, because you may be able to discredit your daughter Danielle and the statement she came forward with. But how do you explain the flat out, very obvious pride and arrogance heard in that leaked audio? So I think both father and son, Girl, Gerl, originally were asking honest and forthright questions. What we see today is something clearly happened when they were asking those legitimate questions and seemed to be exhibiting something that was a natural curiosity.
I talked to Paul and Paul answered all my questions.
There you go.
Hey, Girl, are you a professional investigator? Do you have experience when you were a ranger? Because, one of your sons pleaded on your behalf, sent me an instant message pleading months ago, don't call my dad a coward because he's a ranger, as if that's a get out of jail free card for not being stupid. Are you a professional investigator? You just talk to the guy, like the kid, you catch him in the cookie jar and you sit him down on the table and tell me, were you in the cookie jar? No, I wasn't at all. What qualifies you to be able to ask the right questions? You probably don't even have the right questions to ask in the first place, but somehow Paul satisfied every one of your questions, and your snot-nosed boys, wet behind the ears, who are talking like little maniacs, like the little tough guys they think they are. They're all supporting Paul, the guy that said, nobody knows. I molested my neighbor's daughter. Let me see it. Come over here. Let me show it to me. Show it to me. You freaks.
Paul Van Noy has exhibited deviant behavior, and there has been compelling evidence that has been going on since the beginning of his ministry. There were reports from Paul Van Noy's niece. Now, mind you, her mother is Paul's sister. These people have grown up together. They were there. They were present. They were in those times and places when Paul got his start in Livermore. But rather than believe family testimonial, you're going to go to a guy, Paul Van Noy, who is proven over and over again of deviant behavior, reports reportedly, looking to substantiate this with evidence, but who reportedly was living in church property that he sold and kept the funds for himself prior to his move to Kootenai County. That's reportedly. Well, family was present in his life at that time.
He is the pistol packing preacher, as he calls himself, kind of like his uncle was down in California. Yeah.
So you've got financial stuff. But okay, so you go to Paul Van Noy, who's a professional bullshit artist. And of course, do you think if he's been in this deviant behavior for decades, probably majority of his life, knowing how to cover his ass, and he's built a brand around it, what do you think he's going to tell you? Yes, he is going to be very convincing. And he was so convincing, in fact, that you guys and the father Tom, shame on you. We try to put shame on us. Shame on you for being the example that you have to your grown men's sons that are out here behaving maniacally off your rocker. Yeah. Digging into attempting to dig into dirt about Dan in order to discredit the source of reporting information. This has come to us. We didn't go find these people and dig this up. It didn't happen.
I want to know why Tom, who is the headmaster of a school, as I'm being told, down in California, some homeschool co-op, I want to know why a guy like that should be all about the business of protecting kids. Why are you surrounding yourself with Paul? Why are you protecting him? Why aren't you just shutting your mouth?
It doesn't even make any logical sense. There is nothing. There's too much there. And at Matt Smith, you keep trying to run this stuff through AI with a bias. You can run through things through AI and it learns. It learns from what you've put into it before. It understands the output, the bias, the leaning, what it is that you want to hear framed in the way that you want your argument to be. It knows that. And any number of these pieces of evidence should be enough. And especially when you're talking about the abuse of children. Err on the side, you know what? Let's just be safe. Let's just be safe. We're talking about the cover-up of abuse of children. We're talking about known sex offenders wandering the halls at candlelight, known to Pastor Paul Van Noy. Just take those two things right there.
And by the way, girls, same thing again. Are you okay with Paul, who has already admitted to letting sex offender registry deviants inside the church unknown to others? Are you really okay? How about the rest of you that have your kids at Skate Plaza next door? Or those that have them going to winter camp or any of the other functions? Do you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that who's surrounding your kids is not a sexual deviant? Are you actually okay with that? And if you are, what in the hell is wrong with you?
No, they don't know. And we just received another message. I believe it was yesterday. Again, this would need to be vetted and validated, but from somebody who had run security at the skate rink, Skate Plaza, whatever the name of the thing is. And so he was firsthand witness to stuff going on in Skate Plaza, stuff that he was like, this is a red flag. We need to be searching people's bags. This should not be happening here. And he was told to look past it.
Who told him to look past it? Was it Paul?
It was Paul.
Yeah. Well, we are going to continue to aggregate all of these things. We are even extremely pleased to soon be bringing to you the testimony of former law enforcement right here in Kootenai County that's going to be exposing the things that were going on at the altar and at candlelight back when they were active law enforcement. So yes, it's about ready to get worse. Now, Dawna talked about this a little bit earlier. It's Steve Cooney. Steve Cooney, there's something still not right about this con man, and he is a con man. Paul, I don't have any idea why he keeps running his mouth, but he mentions his good friend this Sunday, Steve Cooney.
He sure did.
You talked about it earlier that Alyssa mentioned him as being influential in her not reporting her rape, as well as she was on mission assignment with him down in Panama.
And we've got that clip because I'd love to hear that from Alyssa.
Do you want to hear it right now?
In her own voice.
I think let's just play this.
Because you've got Paul who brings this up this last Sunday with Alyssa having made statements back in November.
Only dysfunction when we start serving self and not serving others, building each other up.
I'm going to sound very arrogant now. Every politician, everybody running for office always calls my office and makes an appointment to see me. But that's not how you get to me. And again, that sounds very arrogant. And I'm sorry, but please forgive me for what I'm about to say. I carry a pretty good weight in our community. And if people want to get to me, they got to get to me the right way.
I told you this, I told you it sounds arrogant. Almost everybody that runs for office comes and sees me personally. They make an appointment, they get into my office. I don't pursue them, they pursue me. I mean, not to mention, now I'm going to be a jerk because I know you're here to try to get me to pay attention to Dan Wilson. Dan Wilson has not done a thing.
Where's the part of Alyssa?
He has not called, asked for an appointment, offered to take me to dinner, to lunch. He's not wined and dined me. And you know what? It sounds arrogant, but that doesn't fly with me. I'm an imperfect man and arrogant.
The country was to Honduras, doing missionary work there many, many years ago. My associate pastor and very good, continuing good friend, Pastor and Dr. Steve Cooney took me there. He said, "Have you ever been on a mission trip?" I said, "No."
No justice was ever received by you for what was taking place. There was another incident that happened. I don't know if you feel comfortable in sharing this, but I believe that ties in to further reinforce just as how heinous the non-response and the cover-up really goes. Do you feel comfortable in sharing that?
So there was an incident that happened in my life when I was 17. Ultimately, I was attacked in a parking lot. And I was taken to the hospital. And then several days later, I would say more than a week, I was taken to the police department to give my statement. And my parents had called Pastor Paul, but I can't remember if he didn't show up or if he was unavailable, but Pastor Steve Cooney showed up. And there was a lot of pressure on me to basically not say anything, to not speak out, to not get, they were telling me that it was something I was hiding. Like I had a secret boyfriend. I had this going on. I had, I knew the person. I set it up. But the nurse came to me and she said, all reports say this was a forced action. Everything I've seen, this is a forced action. But I was still being told that it was my fault, that I shouldn't speak out. I wasn't protected the way I should be. And that goes on to my very own daughter, the same Pastor Steve Cooney that I just mentioned who showed up that day. When I got married and we were involved in the church, we decided to become missionaries, my husband and I. And we ended up moving to Panama with the church, like the church was supporting Pastor Steve Cooney and his wife and his two grandsons in Panama. And we moved down there. And my daughter would often, she was about 4, maybe 5 years old at the time. He would often bring his grandsons over, as neighbors. We knew each other. We spoke English. It was comforting. But he would often bring his grandsons over. And one day my daughter came to me and she said, I don't want to play with them anymore. And I said, girl, honey, they always come over. Come on, it'll just be fun. And she started crying. And I said, baby, what's wrong? And she says, I don't like what they do. I said, okay, can you tell me about it? And then she pulled me to her room and showed me in the closet. And I said, what happens in here? What's going on? And she then inserted her hands into her underwear. And she says, they touch me like this. And so immediately, as a mom, as a protector, red flags are raised. I told my husband, and we were like, we're not having those boys over today. My husband had confronted Pastor Steve at that time. Steve was very much in denial, very much angry. He said that would never happen, and it must be the movies that we let my 4 or 5-year-old watch. So we shut down. We didn't know what to do. We called Pastor Paul from Panama, and we said, hey, what do we do here? This is what's going on. We never got any replies. We never got direction. But within 2 days, I would say maybe 3 at the most, Pastor Steve Cooney and his wife had moved to another country, which was Uruguay altogether. They just up and moved, and we were left in Panama with no direction or no support. We didn't know, we returned, and nobody ever contacted us. Nobody ever said anything. We tried to contact the church. Nobody supported us.
And did you know Steve Cooney prior to going to Panama?
Yes, we did. He was actually one of my stepdad Eric's very best friends. So we were very close with him and his wife, Marlene.
And did he hold leadership at Candlelight at one point before he was a missionary?
Yes, he did. He was, I believe, assistant pastor, but Candlelight was very aware of us wanting to work alongside Steve and Marlene. We actually lived in what he would call apartments, but to the church, but they were actually condos on the ocean. But we lived just maybe a hallway or two down from them. When Pastor Steve Cooney came back and he spoke to the church, he spoke about all their work, so I believe they were raising funds by him speaking there. But when we got down there, it was very much not like what he described. It was not, they weren't living in poverty. They weren't living among the people. They weren't, co-laboring with them. They were living probably 40 minutes from the nearest town on the ocean in a resort. I can think of one time in the months we were down there that they visited an orphanage. They were trying to get my husband to do some construction work on the orphanage. But I could tell by the conversation and the dynamics that these leaders at the orphanage did not know him from before that day. Well, when we made the commitment to move to Panama and work alongside the Cooneys, my ideals were, we're working in an orphanage, we're taking care of these motherless children, we're doing that, that's what was known to us. When we went down there, it was, okay, get settled, spend some time on the beach, we're going to take the kids to this, we're going to do that. And I kept asking, it's like, when's this work going to start?
Con Man Cooney, good friend of Paul Van Noy, as you heard in that clip when we finally got the right one.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No offense to my beautiful producer.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it needed to be on repeat. Yeah. Paul Van Noy's absolute arrogance, kiss the ring by mistake dinner, all that good stuff.
What Alyssa was saying is not only was he, I think she said, best friends with her stepdad who was abusing her, and he knew what was going on as well and did nothing along with Paul to report it. But he's a scam artist, and we're going to bring you a little more news about some of the scams he ran circa about the time before he went to Panama. And you hear Alyssa saying that they all go down there to co-labor at this orphanage. Cooneys are never there. They're living in a resort in a condo in a resort on the ocean. Once she lets Paul know that Steve's sons allegedly molested her daughter, her grandsons molested her daughter, within 2 days they're gone, vanish. Because that's just what missionary teams do, right? You just vanish in the night without anybody knowing the wiser. So back in 2007, we found this article. As you have been dropping us tips about Cooney's real identity, what his real past is out of Montana, and potential drug convictions. One story that did pop up that I thought was very fascinating.
And make no mistake that Paul Van Noy mentioned Steve Cooney from his performance this last Sunday for a reason, because he knows that this name has been brought forward. That original interview with Alyssa was November 26, 2025. You can hear that live stream in its entirety over on our YouTube channel at the Idaho Sheriff. So it was by no mistake that Paul Van Noy specifically brought him up, calling him his good friend, the first one to take him out on missions. And so it all starts to come together.
Let's look at this page 7 of our master slide. This article, written February 14th, 2011. Keith Eugene Mitchell and alleged co-conspirator Dr. Pastor Stephen J. Cooney doing business as the Option Group operating out of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Without remorse, they will lose your money. In this case, they scammed their victims for over $500,000. They make empty promises of extraordinary returns with little to no chance of losses. Be warned, you will lose your money in their illegal schemes. Here's the summary of the case. In about June of 2007, Keith Mitchell and Stephen Cooney held an investors meeting at a high-end resort in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The victims present consisted of several retired Christian missionaries and senior citizens with limited financial resources. We call those vulnerable victims. Some of the investors alleged that they were shown documents that demonstrated annual returns of 100%. It was indicated that at least the investors should see a return of 3 to 5% a month. Further, it was promised that in the worst case scenario, the investors would never lose more than 5% in any 1 month. And should the investors desire, they could immediately withdraw their investment at any time with 30-day notice. In short, the pitch was the investment was foolproof. Cooney, who purported to be a Christian minister, a man of God of unshakable integrity, supported Mitchell's claim, stating that he had over $1.5 million invested in Mitchell's program and was experiencing huge returns to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. The two men worked in concert to entice and induce the various investors into giving them money. In fact, it was stated by Mitchell that Cooney received compensation for assisting Mitchell. As a follow-up, we're going to go to page 9 now, 8 or 9, second page of that story. As a follow-up to the group meeting in Coeur d'Alene, Mitchell even traveled to Yakima, Washington, to meet with some of the same investors in order to perpetuate his scheme. Ultimately, the group invested over $500,000 with Mitchell. It goes on, in February 2008, the investors discovered that the majority of their principal had been lost by Mitchell and directed them to liquidate what was left of their money. With more than 50% of their money gone, Mitchell confirmed in March that he would liquidate the account and return the money. Further, he promised that he would personally pay back the lost principal himself. When confronted with the issue, Pastor Cooney's only comment was, "It must have been God's will," end quote. Yet the investors discovered that when the investment program began to lose money, Cooney's accounts were liquidated, saving him the fate of the rest of the investors. Investigations have shown that not only is Keith Mitchell not licensed to sell market securities, but he previously had been under investigation by the state of Idaho for selling securities without a license and was subsequently fined some $25,000 in order to cease and desist his activities. Mitchell and Cooney have, within the last 2 months, employed the services of 2 different attorneys to shield themselves from the outrage of the bilked investors. They've done everything from tell the investors to pound sand to promise to make good on lost money. Because, good Christian teaching, preaching pastors that care about the flock like the imposter Pastor Paul, they're all about making certain, you get your money back.
Yeah.
Right, Paul? Both the attorneys hired to protect Mitchell and Cooney have dropped from the picture as Mitchell continued to stonewall them as well. The last page here, a couple things that I want to point out. They end by saying, bottom line warning to the public, beware of Keith Eugene Mitchell and Stephen J. Cooney. These con men will claim to be able to make you incredible returns on your investment. Their claims are a scam. They will lose your money laughing all the way to the bank and leaving you broke. Cooney, who is currently listed as a director of Candlelight International, doing business as Candlelight Christian Church, with the Idaho Secretary of State, is showing his home address to be 8917 West Cougar Gulch Road in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Oh.
Now, I'm not going to tell you whose address that is, but it is a very prominent Candlelight. I don't even know if he's officially a pastor right now, but he's involved. I've known this guy for a long time, and when I saw it, I was shocked, but not shocked. Cooney, I don't believe, ever lived at that address. Why in the hell is all Candlelight associated people constantly involved in covering for people that have been involved in scams? Now, I didn't get it ready tonight, but as the newest information dropped that I was able to confirm, it looks like that Cooney also started yet another, some kind of financial lending group.
Okay.
We're going to talk about that more, but this guy's a con man. He's a good friend of Paul's. It's fitting. He takes advantage of people. He doesn't report sex assaults against those that he knows are in harm's way. He bilks those in the flock. And he's a friend of Paul's. And Paul went out of his way this weekend after Alyssa even dropped his name 5-6 weeks ago. The arrogance of Paul Van Noy, who should be stepping down right now, stepping aside while an investigation takes place. He ain't going to do it.
Well, not only is he not going to do it, he calls out these other deviant individuals and says, doesn't deny an association with them, their longtime close friend, still in routine contact. So not only is he nowhere near stepping down, despite anything that comes out, there are zero signs of that. He's going to shove it in your face, is what he's doing.
So my question is there any? This has been going on for how many weeks now? Almost 8 weeks? Where are the so-called godly leaders in this community? Where are the men of God, the self-proclaimed men of God that got the little, theology certificates on their walls? Great theologians, ordained ministers of the word of God, self-congratulatory. Where are these guys in the ministerial association that have said, hey, enough is enough. Paul, you must step down, do the right thing for a time, allow an investigation to occur. We know that the criminal investigation is currently ongoing, despite what the Van Noy kids would say. They know very well firsthand that it's going on. I believe that we have nothing but cowards in this community when it comes to the clergy. However, every once in a while, there comes a man of God, a righteous man, who comes up very quietly, prophesies and says something that needs to be said, and does it with not much fanfare. Today I saw a post that was shared with me by a local pastor who absolutely does have courage. This is what a true man of God looks like. Pastor David Bruet, I hope I said that right, Pastor. He posted this. He says, with a broken and disappointed heart today, I attended the Cooney County Ministerial Association meeting. It was hosted at the Altar Church. With all of the latest information surrounding our local pastors and misconduct, I wanted to see if the pastors in our community were taking any action. I was disappointed to see so many leaders from the community laughing and joking and not discussing the most pressing issues. This is the only about third time I have attended one of these meetings. It was extremely difficult to be around spiritual men devoid of God's leadership. I will not be attending any of the meetings again, and pray more earnestly than ever for the other churches in our communities to have leaders who will stand with the authority on God's word instead of being a good old boys social club. Those of you right now that are going to any kind of gathering, calling yourselves followers of Christ, if your pastor is not actively talking about this right now and not publicly stating that for the cause of Christ, the ministerial association should be leading an investigation by true expert investigators that do this all across the country to do a correct, thorough investigation into everything that Paul Van Noy and his staff and those surrounding him and elders are involved with or have done. If they're not doing it, then you should not be at that church. If you're truly going to call yourself a believer, run from that church. No different than if your church shut down during COVID, you should have run. I want a pastor like this pastor, David. I want a man that has courage to come out and publicly say something. Instead, we have a list of community members who can't get enough of Paul. Page 11. We're going to keep adding to this list, and you're never going to be forgotten. Tom Gurl, Stephanie Fetzer, Matt Smith, Aaron Barnard, Jeremiah Gurl, Bradford Gurl, Jeff Pogue, Paul Herndon, Sandy Muse Brewer. Good old Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about a fool. Katrina Doty, Don Bradway, Bob Norris, Tim Remington, John Padula, Lou Miser, John Leffler, Shauna Tiddens McFarland, Sarah Gibson from, what is that, Freeberries?
Grooveberries.
Shelley Kroll, Melinda Reed, Larry Grennan, Albert Rohrbeck, LJ Bratt. It's unbelievable that you guys have all entered into the arena. I actually knew that many of you were stupid. I didn't realize you were actually this stupid. I'm going to call every one of you out. You're supporting the son of perdition, an evil man, which tells me if you're following a guy like this, no matter what has been thrown at him, without any kind of humility out of him or true repentance, when you listen to him brag about molesting his next door neighbor's daughter, no remorse. When you see him then come back and try to reframe it going, well, we were both 5 years old. We were playing doctor. No, you weren't, Paul. When you repeatedly allowed sex offenders at the peril of your congregation run around. When you steal from widows large sums of money. When you take advantage of your own sister and don't repent, and instead, once it is broadcast, you try to call and manipulate your very own sister and to coerce her, your victim. Meanwhile, while you're at an all-paid expense trip to the sands of Hawaii to outrun all the bullshit that you've left right here, while you're yucking it up. All of you that are supporting Paul, you're never, ever going to outrun it at this point, because we will make certain it is memorialized as long as the internet's around. You supported Paul Van Noy unconditionally because you worship a man, not God. I see your fruits. I'll call every last one of you, and there's many of you on. I don't have any problem whatsoever calling you. You ain't followers of Christ. Your fruit is rotten. Where are the leaders in this community? At least we have one.
We do. That was very sobering, and I think really represents where the church is headed, where we're headed in the end times. Those who think that they're in a church of revival currently, when we're looking in our own county, and every man showing up to the most recent meeting, the Ministerial Association over at the Altar Church, every last one of them yucking it up, levity.
Here's something else I'm
not
going to say.
taking any of it seriously, well, except for one.
If we truly had a sheriff that was a true lawman, somebody that had 30 plus experience of hard service down in California, I've been the sheriff for 4 years. You would expect for how often he hangs out at candlelight, and we know it because we got the pictures of them hanging out. We have Paul in his own words stating that he and Bob hang out together, and when he calls, Bob picks up the phone. Bob Norris doesn't have any clue about what's going on at candlelight. The Cooney County Sheriff's Office is so poor with their intel that they don't know what is coming and going from candlelight and all the associates? Or does Norris know damn good and well what's going on? Not only there, but also at the altar and covering for it. All you hypocrites, you're all spun up about the Epstein list, which I am too. But you don't give a damn about what's going on in your own backyard, you hypocrites, you brood of vipers. You make me want to vomit. If you had a real sheriff, the sheriff would be behind the scenes taking care of business, not waiting for some guy and his wife on a Wednesday night podcast to bring out and expose what is going on in this county. Until What needs to be exposed is exposed. We're going to continue to hit this every single week. Now, do we want to talk about the foul-mouthed, loudmouth offspring of Paul Van Noy?
I think we do here. We're going to do that for a minute because they have been very vocal since the accusations from their sister, Danielle, came out. It's been about a month and a half ago now. And Danielle, I can say, is very empathetic and loves her siblings. She loves them. And she understands the environment that you all grew up in and has extreme empathy toward even the behaviors of betrayal of her, and siding with her father, who covered up abuse of Danielle, and for Joel and Noelle, your sister. And as your story is forever changing, as you had to collaborate with your dad to say, okay, our story needs to change now. We need to update this based on what's coming out. Even you know that your own story is changing. Even you know where you were during the times, places, and events, and you know the truth. But we understand that right now your greatest effort is to protect your father for reasons that you hold closely and dearly, and we understand that. And your sister Danielle, she understands that lies are being told about her, she has a great deal of understanding as to the dynamic in the family, the cycle of abuse, and exactly why that is. And as angry as that will make you, and the desperate need that you have to defend yourselves, we understand why it's happening. And so there are those of you who may have seen this circulating on social media. And the reason we're addressing it tonight is because it is nonstop. And Joel, when you create a burner profile to continue with the lies, we're going to block the burner. If you want to continue with the defamation stuff that can eventually you can be gone after legally for, you can do it under your own name. And we are allowing you the time and space to do that.
Yeah, under your own name, say whatever you want, Joel. Say it all day long.
Here's one of the things that was most recent and the most heinous, and I'll let Dan address this. Joel Van Noy says Dan Wilson is a self-admitted rapist, forced himself upon an unwilling participant. So that statement there lives in infamy on the internet, can eventually be brought back against Joel. That's one of the things in a barrage from Joel and Noelle. Mm-hmm. What are some thoughts that you have toward some of the statements that you know that they've made? How far is too far, or why are they as desperate as they are to protect their dad and protect his changing narrative?
Well, first of all, this is absolutely false. Straight from the pit of hell, false. And it has been noted, and eventually there will be consequences for what you have said. But the reason that they are doing this is because they are desperate. Daddy has been their piggy bank. We know from the many police reports, even Paul, and I'm going to read some of this, Noelle was so out of control that she got mad when she was being evicted by her dad. As an adult, she decided that she wanted to cause destruction. She picked up a rock on her way out of the front door and she hurled it through a front window and broke it. So Paul calls law enforcement. Law enforcement comes. And ultimately, Paul decides not to press charges because, after all the legal issues, he's going to have to cough up the money. Because, of course, Noelle isn't going to get a public defender. She's not going to have to pull up her big girl panties and face the consequences for her violence. But it's a pattern as we read through many other police reports, whether it is Brenda with Joel and his baby mama, Erica. I don't know why I always want to say it, because it looks like
it's spelled funny.
Yeah, Arica. It's missing the F. Erica. And he tells her, hey, if my mom talks disrespectful to you again, you have my permission to punch her in the face. And eventually she does just that. And she attempts to strangle Joel's mother as she's slapping her.
And again, these are all official
police reports. police statements,
statement documents,
and we know we've got a special show coming up where we're going to showcase all the reports and all the convictions of the Van Noy children. Some of them have been deferred.
The reason that matters, because we've had people come out and say, look, a great way to air a bunch of dirty laundry out here on the internet. But there is a reason for it, because we also, in the effort of full transparency and showing evidence, when you have the adult children of Paul Van Noy being as vile as they are, Paul hasn't made statements aside in quite a while, aside from his performances on stage where he takes jabs or he'll shove it in your face like he did, talking about what great friends he is with Steve Cooney. When we've presented to you tonight the evidence of patterns of abuse and deviant behavior of Steve Cooney. And on Sunday, he's my great friend and pastor and Dr. Stephen Cooney. So the reason that we bring evidence of these police reports against the adult children of Paul Van Noy is because they have been so vocal in defense of their father, again, with an absolute constantly changing narrative. The truth doesn't do that. The truth doesn't change a narrative from week to week to try to chase after truth that's being told, and then your defense continues to change. That's not the truth.
Yeah.
But Joel and Noel have been very vigilant in doing that and very vile in the way that they've done it. And that is why we've brought that documentation forward. So another thing, Joel, he comes after us. He'll also go after anybody else in the comments that dare challenge him. You know how stupid you sound. You defecate from your mouth. Also, do you know how stupid it sounds asking for proof of something that never happened? That never happened over 25 years ago. He's tagging Danielle Van Noy's husband, Gordon Waltho. He's tagging him in these posts to try to force him to respond. Danielle was an adult, making claims about his sister. He's naming names in these posts, talking about what his sister claimed. That she didn't, this was her responsibility because there's some kind of consensual thing and she didn't report it. So now his sister's guilty, so he has no problem calling her out. Here's a burner profile, Millie Onzi, and we received intel today that from a family member that says, look, this is very much in the tone of Joel. We're confident that he's the one that's created this, and you'll see the patterns. We've since blocked this account, but just to tell you how vile. Nothing, you're talking about the adult children of current lead head pastor of Candlelight Christian Fellowship, who is going to bat for their father. And you know that he knows they're doing that. He has never once said, get off the internet, shut your mouths. He is allowing them. They've shared stories. He's changed his story and he is putting it out through his adult children. So this vile, you people are little bitches who wouldn't believe anything because it must be true. It's on the internet. Bunch of Sallys. Go believe some liberal fag who lost an election because he was never more than above a mall cop and poses in pictures like he's an effing police officer, but never achieved anything but having an ugly ass trophy wife. And that is all he has. So he is mad that he didn't get a title and now he is still a dumb F. And then posting propaganda. Like I said, if you, Joel, you want to do this from your own profile, go ahead. It's prosecutable.
Joel is a weak man individually. Joel's the kind of guy that runs his mouth behind his keyboard because he's too fat and out of shape to actually come and do anything real. Look, the dude, you want to talk about calling my wife ugly? I won't go so far as to talk about your physical appearance, but all you guys are tough talkers. I actually lived the walk for 12 years. And unlike you, I qualified to be a police officer, was a police officer. Whether you want to continue to try to diminish my service to my community that I did selflessly for 12 years, whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't even need defending, especially not here. But here's Noelle, daughter to Pastor Paul Van Noy, spreading more about her gentle, loving, sweet father, how he apologized to his sister because she said he was hurt and he admitted he didn't do enough. That mattered to him. So again, the point here being Paul Van Noy is absolutely using his adult children. This here is Noel, putting that day's version of their spin in response. Because if you go back to the beginning, and again, girls, Bradford girl, Tom girl, ask yourselves, why does his story keep changing? Why is he changing his story and using his adult children as mouthpiece? Well, he's using you. He's using you. So, I mean, I'm certain you have his adult children are sticking.
Or are they involved in something?
Well, it would seem so because it is so unnatural, unnatural. Noelle, again, just very extremely vile in her language. Joel Van Noy calling somebody else who again is saying, look, the Terry Lore, who has been on saying the truth needs to come out, the truth needs to be exposed. Joel Van Noy is jumping in and said, "Oh, you got me, you old dusty piece of you know what."
Hey, Paul, you raised these kids. They're still clearly in your care. You guys are fools if you allow a pastor with these are no different than the sons of Eli. You guys remember fat Eli that went discipline his sons that were carrying on with the temple prostitutes, and God took away his ability to lead Israel. You remember that story? Eventually falls over, breaks his neck, they're killed. Great example. Since Paul wants to talk about him being, the great Elijah, just wanting to crawl into a cave and die because of his own actions. Let's also talk about some other Old Testament prophets. Your children are incredibly unruly. They have been that way since their juvenile days all the way through to their young adults. They've done heinous things not only to your wife, to your property, and to others. They're drug addicts. They're thieves. And these are the people with convictions that have been arrested. They're telling every one of us basically to F off. And there's nothing to see here. And it's coming. I'm going to be releasing every one of the police reports on Noel and Joel for starters, so that the congregates and those that are in the area can see what kind of children Paul raises. Here's the bottom line. Paul has been nothing more than an imposter. He's a con man. He is not a follower of Christ. I don't care what you say. I will make that judgment because I look at the fruits, and everything surrounding Paul. Everything is rotten. Everything. But he's a great teacher. So yeah, so is Satan. His own children cannot be controlled. And then let's go deeper. Why are his children not under control? Well, maybe it has to do with the parents. We have no idea what those kids faced, what it was like growing up in that family, that dysfunction. We have no idea.
Yeah.
What happened to them?
Yep.
So Joel, part of me feels bad for you. Noel, part of me feels bad for you. I have adult children. None of them are out of control like you guys are, and you grew up in a one-family home. Pastor kids.
I want to present this one comment because I think this ties in really well, and I want to hear you respond to this. We're heading in toward the end of the program here, but this Andy Filler joining us on Facebook tonight shares this. This is important. He says, when I went to LCHS, could you remind me what Liberty
Lake City
High School, sorry. I saw Joel on a couple of different occasions stick up for kids who were being bullied and beat up. It's crazy to me that he didn't do this for his sister. Now, I think what this speaks to is that you have people who are highly conflicted individuals. And this is also then confusing to people who are sticking up for or advocating for Paul Van Noy because of all the good that he's done. And that's something that you've spoken to because people have said to you, how could he just be that big of a con? And one of the things you had said is, I don't think it's exactly that. It's as though there are two parts of him that are in constant fight with each other.
Yeah, I saw that all the time on patrol. We deal with people that were mental cases down on the street or severely violent, mentally ill, sick suspects. you would talk to them and you would realize they would have this one side of life where they were doing good. They were helping other people out. You know, everybody loved them. And then they had this extremely sick, deviant side to them. And it was almost as if it was a Dr. Jekyll inside. And they would do the good things. They would pursue the good things in order to save their soul, to soothe their own conscience.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to convince me, based on everything that we know about Paul, that he's nothing more than a carnival showman. The devil is a angel masquerading an angel of light. Demons can quote scripture better than we can. All right, I said that wrong. Satan is masquerading as an angel of light. If he could deceive or talk Adam and Eve into disobeying God in the beginning in their perfect state, men today can do the same thing to other men. I think this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a con man that understands and can teach. He understands the Bible. So what? He could be a professor, but he doesn't really believe it. When we talk about what he's done to widows in their distress and other vulnerable people, see what he did to his own sister. And I'm still not convinced he ever really was a gangster. I think he was the wannabe that grabbed the persona of his uncle to try to create this great conversion story so he sounded really good, because as he's explaining all the things that he did, he doesn't sound really remorseful.
No.
But he's a con man through and through.
Yeah. You'll have to excuse us too. We both had gotten sick after some travels about a week and a half ago. Dan he suffered worse than I did, so he's just barely getting his voice back tonight, but you've been a trooper powering through this episode, so we appreciate your insight, and I think you had some good, encouraging words for us before we head out here.
Look, don't be dismayed. The battle isn't lost. Just because you attended one of these churches, we're going to talk more about Padula and Remington. Can't wait to share with you what we have on those guys. Padula is running for county commissioner right now. We're going to talk about how the altar and Candlelight are in cahoots together. But if you are attending either one of these churches and you are good people, meaning to do good, don't despair. You're being shown what's going on. It doesn't change what your heart attitude is, what your obedience is. You're just being shown exposure of what's going on. The veil is being lifted, and now you have a choice. Either you're going to stand up for the gospel of Jesus Christ, you're going to stand up for victims, the innocent, the vulnerable, and you're going to do something about it, or you have been warned and you failed to do nothing. To him that does good but doesn't do it, to him it is sin. And by the way, we have people on the inside that are diligently at every single service recording what public officials and political power players are attending. And we are keeping track, and we're going to show those in the community, the voters, who are still supporting Paul. So this is a shot across the bow to all of you political leaders out there, you elected officials who want to continue to wade in the cesspool instead of digging yourself out. I saw one politician took a picture of his children at the candlelight service, Christmas Eve service, and then got a little flack, and it looks like pulled it back down. So maybe they're getting the word. But look, stay strong and of good courage. I want to leave you with something that was said by Spurgeon. We'll go to that last slide, please. Spurgeon, of course, was a great theologian, and he smoked cigars, so
Must be a good dude.
He's a good man.
Mm-hmm.
He says, far better for a man that he had never been born than that he should degrade a pulpit into a showbox to exhibit himself in. Paul Van Noy, I absolutely believe, and I will cast judgment on him, that he has degraded the pulpit. He has exhibited himself as You know, he's working so hard, guys. I mean, how many of you guys, this is what I don't get about pastors. They get these jobs. They're treated like kings. They're celebrities. Then they get to go, you know, for a couple weeks at a time to Hawaii on sabbatical because, you know, their job is so much harder than the carpenters or the teachers. I like pastors who actually work for a living and then shepherd people without compensation from a church. I think that is a more biblical model. People that get rich, make an income off of leading a flock, I think they're compromised. You're not going to change my mind anymore. That's the conclusion I've come to after almost 50 years of being involved in the church. So stay strong and of good courage. Fight the good fight. Now is not the time to back down. If you have good, credible information that you want to share with us, send it to where?
info@libertywithoutcompromise.com. Again, that's info@libertywithoutcompromise.com. You've heard names mentioned in this episode. If you have information on Steve Cooney, there are various accounts, different names, possible use of his mother's maiden name. So there could be aliases involved there. People who know him personally, firsthand witnesses to accounts in those times and places when he's involved, and clearly still involved and close friends and associates with Pastor Paul Van Noy currently. So any tips you have, facts, evidence, information, email info@libertywithoutcompromise.com. You can also use the contact form on our website, which is libertywithoutcompromise.com.
Pray for my dear friend Jim, who's having a very difficult time right now. Pray for his pain levels. Pray for comfort for him. Pray for all those who are suffering for the cause of Christ. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you for joining us tonight on the Liberty Without Compromise live stream broadcast. You can visit our website to watch past episodes and view exclusive reports on the Kootenai County political power players. Not just about Paul Van Noy. There is an entire network, and they keep exposing themselves. Again, that website, libertywithoutcompromise.com. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That handle is still at the Idaho Sheriff. You'll see the Liberty Without Compromise logo there on our YouTube channel. Subscribe there. Live streams, they disappear from Facebook. It's a policy of Facebook. They disappear after 30 days. So subscribe to that YouTube channel at the Idaho Sheriff. If you're listening back on our podcast, or if you like podcasts, you can listen and subscribe wherever you get your shows. So if you don't have time for these hour-and-a-half, 2-hour live streams, when you're sitting at home, you can listen while you're driving to and from work or running your errands. We appreciate you joining us tonight and staying plugged into this very difficult community, family conversation. We're working to expose evil and corruption, and it really does just get more complicated. It is not linear. That's kind of the way evil goes. It's not linear. It's not simple.
I want to give you another word of encouragement from the scripture. Crucible for silver in the furnace for gold, but the Lord tests the hearts of man. And the Lord's eyes wander to and fro over the entire earth looking for a righteous man. Be found to be righteous by the wandering eye of God. Have a good night. There we go. Sign us out.
Bradford girl wanted to know if Dan knew you could see him looking at your LinkedIn profile while we're live on the show.
It is true. Yeah. And
Did
I
you
do
know
know
that?
that. I did know that
Yeah.
because Bradford, I've been on LinkedIn longer than you have not been in diapers. You're just a
He
wet
knows.
behind the ears, little punk ass kid. Your one brother that's the school teacher is smarter than all of you guys. He knows how to keep his mouth shut.
Indeed.